Hey everybody, this is Jim Farmer with Out on Film, and also an arts reporter for Georgia Voice. I'm very, very happy to be talking to Oscar and Emmy winner Alan Ball. Alan has a terrific film called Right that's premiering on Amazon November 24th. Thank you for joining me this morning, Alan.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again too. It's been a day.
I saw you yesterday.
Exactly. Thanks so much. Well, tell us a little bit about Uncle Frank. How did this film come up for you?
Uncle Frank come up.
Yes.
30 years ago, I was living in New York City, and I went home to my hometown of Marietta, Georgia, to come out of the closet to my mother.
Okay.
And when I did, she said, "Well, I blame your father for this because I think he was that way too." And then on the next day, we were driving around North Georgia visiting some relatives, and we drove past a lake, Vogel State Park in Gainesville, Georgia. And she very nonchalantly said, Blairsville, Georgia, actually. She very nonchalantly said, "Well, that's where Sam Lassiter drowned." And I'd never heard of this person. So I said, "Who's Sam Lassiter?" And she said, "He was a real good friend of your daddy's."
Okay.
And I later found out that my father had accompanied Sam's body on a train back to their hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. So I don't know if my father was gay. He was already dead, so I wasn't able to have a conversation with him about it. But it sort of opened this window in my brain of what if that were true? What if that were the case? What if, what would that story have been? And that was 30 years ago. So, and it sort of percolated in my head for about 25 years. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I sat down to write a script, and Uncle Frank is what came out.
Okay, it's a terrific film. So thank you all. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. Was this a hard film? Was this a hard film to get made?
Was it a hard film to make or to write?
To get made, to have someone finance
that last part.
Was this a hard film to get financed?
Yeah, it took us a long time to find a financier. A lot of people passed on the script. I think they just looked at it and said, "We don't see how this is going to make us any money," and they passed. Eventually, we got Paul Bettany attached into, and sort of that helped us to get into some other meetings with some other financiers, and eventually Miramax said, "Yes, we'll finance this. We'll produce it independently." And it was, but it took like two or 3 years to get it set up.
Everywhere you look in this film, there's an amazing actor performer. I mean, it's an extraordinary ensemble. Can you talk a little bit about Sophia? I mean, Sophia is just, Sophia's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about Sophia in this film?
Sophia, I had seen, Beth is an interesting part, and because in the first 10 minutes or so of the movie, she's 14 years old, and then she's 18 for the rest of the movie. So, I didn't know what actress was in that age. I don't know actresses in that age range. I don't watch the Disney Channel. So I was like trying to figure out who are we going to get to play this part. And I saw the HBO miniseries Sharp Objects, and she was in that, and she played young Amy Adams, the younger version of Amy Adams.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I saw her, I went, "Who is that girl? What is that face? I can't take my eyes off her." And I looked her up on IMDb and saw that she had done Stephen King's It, the horror movie. And I rented that and watched it and saw that she could carry an entire movie. And she was the perfect age at the time. She was 16, exactly between 14 and 18. So I said, let's just offer it to her. And we did. And she said yes. And I'm so glad she did, because I can't imagine anybody else being Beth and playing. I can't imagine another Beth with so much soulfulness and innocence and just those eyes. She's really special.
Yeah. You work with Peter McDisey quite a lot. Can you talk about your working relationship with him?
Well, Peter and I have worked together for many years, and he's actually become my producing partner. So he was a producer on this movie as well. I knew that, you know, I, I'm not a person who says like, how am I going to address diversity in this project? But at the same time, I knew that Frank would probably end up with somebody very unlike himself
Mhm.
and unlike the people in the place where he came from. And I liked the idea of Wally being somebody uh, who is Muslim, who is a practicing Muslim,
Yeah.
but still is completely self-accepting, but knows that he'll never be able to come out to his family, and is okay with that, and still has a close relationship with them, because that's very different from the Western idea of of um, of how acceptance and stuff like that. Uh, Wally, I think, is just a really unique individual who is just super optimistic. And yeah, he's had some bad stuff happen to him in his life too, but it hasn't scarred him or crippled him in the way that maybe Frank's experience did. Uh, and I know Peter, and I know him as an actor, and I know he usually is cast as more overbearing characters who were more threatening. And I knew, knowing him personally, I knew that he would be perfect in this. And I think he was, and I think Wally is really one of the. There are several instances of glue that holds the movie together, but Wally is one of them.
Can you talk briefly about Margaret Martindale, Lois Smith? Again, this is such an amazing ensemble.
You know what happened once we had Peter and Paul and Sophia?
Mhm.
I was looking at rounding out the rest of the cast, and I thought, what do I have to lose? Just make the list of the people, the perfect people that you would want to cast in every single one of these roles.
Yeah.
And then I called their agents and I said, I wrote this movie. It's gonna get made. It's everybody's working for scale. It's got to be a labor of love. But I'm a huge fan of your client. Can you send it on to them to read? And every single one of them said yes. So it was kind of like a dream come true to work with that ensemble. Those days when the whole family was there and we were doing the birthday party or the reading of the will or the funeral it was so much fun. It was so much fun just to be in the company of such amazing actors, and they're all fantastic people too. Everybody was doing this movie because they wanted to be doing it and they really loved the project. And it was very short, 5-week shoot, but those were 5 weeks that I'll never forget.
When I think about all of your work, I mean, I'm such a fan of all of your work, but all of your work has such great three-dimensional queer representation. Can you talk a little bit why that's so important to you?
Well, being gay myself, I think it's important. I grew up watching movies and TV where gay characters were either villains or psychopaths or tragic victims,
Mhm.
and and usually always completely defined by their sexuality and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I've always, part of my own struggle or journey, I guess is a better word, has been to not let being gay define me the way that society wants it to define me. So whenever I write characters who are gay, they're gay, but they're also, I try to make them as three-dimensional, as fully rounded as any character, and that's just always been something that was important to me, because that's always something I wanted to see myself when I was growing up and seeing queer representation in entertainment.
Sure. So you grew up in
It's gotten
Marietta.
so much better.
Yeah.
I grew up in Marietta. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you move?
I left Marietta in 1976, the year after my father died, to go to college in Florida,
Mhm.
in Tallahassee, Florida State University, and then I moved to Sarasota, Florida, and then from there I moved to New York City in 1986, and I moved out here I think around 95 or 96, 97.
Okay. Do you, I mean, I know that you used to come back to visit your mom, but do you get to Atlanta much these days?
I don't. Once my mom died, my brothers, one of them lives in Arlington, Virginia, and the other one lives in Blairsville.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't get back to Georgia much. I did after we wrapped up Uncle Frank, which was 2019. Um, I came to Atlanta for a few days and visited with some relatives, but that's the last time I've been there.
Yes. As I was mentioning earlier, so much of your work is just so much a part of pop culture, American Beauty, True Blood. I want to ask you about 6 Feet Under, which is still one of my favorite television shows of all time. When you look back on 6 Feet Under, I mean, what do you remember about that? Because it's such a show. It still holds up so amazingly well.
I remember it being a really great experience.
Yeah,
I remember really, for in a lot of ways, that was film school for me because I had never worked on a single camera show before. I had only worked on 4 camera sitcoms
hmm,
and theater. So it was a huge learning experience. It was the first time I directed. I directed the pilot of 6 Feet Under.
yes,
Working with the cast, working with the writers I worked with, it was just a joy. But it is, it is a little. It's running a TV show has high burnout potential,
yeah,
and both the TV shows I ran for 5 years, and I remember, finishing and kind of feeling like, hey, where'd those 5 years of my life go?
yeah.
um, but I loved it. I loved 6 Feet Under, and I'm very grateful that I was able to be involved in something that happened at that time, right when it seemed like the possibilities of television were really sort of opening up.
Sure.
Of the possibilities of what television could be with The Sopranos and Sex and the City, and it was I look at it as a gift. It was a real gift.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
What's next?
Yeah, what's next for you?
I am working on a pitch for a limited TV series,
Okay.
and I'm writing a pilot that I'm writing just because it's a show I would like to see.
Okay.
And I've got a bunch of screenplays that I've written over the years that hopefully somebody will want to produce one of them.
Great. Alan, thank you
It's
so
always a
much.
struggle.
Thank you so much for joining this morning. The film is amazing. Uncle Frank. It's going to be on Amazon November 24th. Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. It's good to
You
see
have a
you.
good day.